What's the best story you have that's 100% true, but nobody believes you?
Story 1. I was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, on a business trip. The night before my departure, I wanted a drink, but the hotel lounge was closed for a private party. I didn't want to go out alone at that hour, so I started chatting with one of the security guards. Then a woman approached and asked if there was a problem. I explained that I was just hoping to get a drink, but didn't want to cause any trouble. She spoke excellent English. I can get by in Portuguese, but I'm far from fluent, and explained that the party was a post-wedding celebration. She was older than me, probably in her late 40s, but very attractive. She asked if I wanted to join her upstairs for a drink and led me to her room. We ended up being intimate for about 30 minutes until she said she had to go back to the lounge. When I asked why the rush, she told me she was the mother of the bride. I felt like I was in a MasterCard commercial. Story 2. In February, a friend and I went on a spontaneous backpacking trip to India. We were both feeling lost in life and wanted an adventure. We landed in Bangalore and spent 2 amazing weeks traveling around until we ended up at Palolem Beach in Goa, staying in a cheap bungalow. We were supposed to check out after 2 weeks and keep moving, but the night before that, something happened that changed everything. We were walking along the beach to a silent party, where everyone listens to music through headphones because of nighttime noise restrictions. I had my guitar with me, which I often use to meet people and jam. Along the way, 2 friendly Indian guys stopped us to chat and eventually invited us to breakfast the next morning, which happened to be the day we were checking out. We thought nothing of it and agreed. The next morning, after checking out, we met them. They pointed to their car and told us to hop in so we could go to their apartment nearby. I thought it was strange since I expected breakfast at a restaurant, but my friend was already in the car, so I followed. After about a 10-minute drive, we arrived at their apartment and found 2 more men there. The mood quickly shifted. They said they had a business proposal for us to help smuggle jewelry to Japan. They claimed it was a legal loophole and that we'd be well paid. That's when all my alarm bells went off. We refused, but they got angry and told us we didn't have a choice. They forced us to sign papers, took photos of our passports and credit cards, and before long, several more men showed up. We were surrounded and terrified. Then a man who looked like a tattooed, long-haired version of Dave Grohl showed up. He seemed to be in charge. They put us in a car with 3 of them and drove us to another town, where they checked us into a filthy motel near the train tracks. We were never left alone. The next morning, one of the men answered a call claiming to be from Indian Customs, saying jewelry had been intercepted on its way to Japan and that we needed to provide proof of purchase. It was obviously fake, but the men insisted it was real and kept showing us the supposed diamonds and emeralds they were sending. Fear started to distort our sense of reality. We began to think we might actually be in trouble with the authorities. More men showed up later that day, including one with a scar, and another who introduced himself as Max said he would help us. But he turned out to be a complete psychopath, volatile and dangerous. They made us call our banks to raise our credit limits, then used a portable card terminal to drain our accounts. When I went to a nearby internet cafe to access my online banking, my friend was left alone and later told me Max had threatened him. When I got back and told them my bank wouldn't unlock all my funds, Max lost it. He stared into my eyes and accused me of lying. I kept insisting there was nothing I could do, and eventually, he calmed down. After they emptied our accounts, they threw us into a taxi in the middle of the night and drove deep into the jungle. We were convinced we were going to die there. I even had a small pocket knife ready to defend myself. After a long, terrifying drive with reckless drivers, we finally reached Mumbai. At the airport, they forced me to withdraw the last of my money and hand it over right there, surrounded by armed security guards. I wanted to ask for help, but I still believed we might be wanted by the Indian police. When I hesitated to give Max the last of the cash, he snapped. He started yelling, threatened to slit my throat, and charged at me. Another man restrained him as a security guard approached to ask if everything was okay. The guard gave me a strange look and told me my money should be in my pockets. I just nodded and said we were fine. They then made us take a taxi to another terminal to board a flight home. Max demanded the rest of the money I had refused him earlier. When I hesitated, he hit me in the stomach, grabbed the cash, and even set some of it on fire out of rage. Eventually, one of the others calmed him down, and we finally got our tickets and passed through security. Once on the plane, we were finally free. We flew from Mumbai to Abu Dhabi. where we used the last of our change to buy Big Macs, the first beef we'd had in weeks, and it felt like a small victory. From there, we flew to Brussels and then home on a small plane. When we landed, we went straight to the police. We were questioned for hours, and investigators are still determining whether our banks or insurance will cover our losses. We've since seen psychologists to help us deal with the trauma. To this day, it still feels unreal that we survived that trip at all. Story 3. When I was about 11, I went to this big kids fishing festival where all the names were put into a hat to decide which guide each group of kids would go with, usually 2 or 3 per guide. By pure luck, my name was drawn first, so my brother and I got paired with the number 1 guide there, apparently a professional fisherman. He was the only guide who showed up with his own cameraman. Like, an actual cameraman followed us around filming everything. The guide was super nice, and we had a great time. He told us that since he made fishing videos, we might end up in one of them. Maybe even on a fishing TV show, but he wasn't sure. Fast forward a few weeks. One Sunday morning, I'm watching ESPN before church, and suddenly there I am, on TV, reeling in a massive walleye with my little brother. My parents were getting ready, and my brother was in the shower, so no one else saw it, but I was freaking out. This was before DVRs or anything like that, so I couldn't record it. But for about 30 glorious seconds, I was on ESPN, probably the peak of my fame right there. Story 4. My great-great-great-grandfather, Earl Boardman, invented quick cake mix. He loved tinkering and coming up with new ideas. One day in his kitchen, he thought, why not make a cake mix that only needs eggs and milk instead of a bunch of ingredients? So he created an easy quick mix formula right there at home. He didn't think much of it and ended up giving the idea to his close friend, Marjorie Husted. She saw the potential, cut contact with him, and later claimed herself as the inventor. A few years ago, my mom, whose side of the family Earl belonged to, tried reaching out to Betty Crocker Incorporated to get some kind of certificate or official acknowledgement that our story was true. They never responded or even acknowledged her messages. So all I have is my word, which I swear is 100% honest. When I was growing up, people teased me whenever I told this story, saying I was making it up. But my family knows it's real, and we've got plenty of other impressive achievements to be proud of, even if we missed out on what could have been billions. It doesn't really affect me much, but sometimes I think about how I could have been insanely rich if my great-great-great-grandpa had just patented his invention and taken a cut of the company. So yeah, that's my story that no one believes. All because Earl Boardman didn't patent his idea. Moral of the story, patent your inventions, and next time you buy cake mix for someone's birthday, remember that Earl Boardman came up with it, and Marjorie Husted took the credit. Story 5. Back in 10th grade, my buddy James and I were hanging out in the ROTC room with one of the cool teachers before classes started. As we were getting ready to leave, I cracked open a Coke while walking out the door to first period, right as the grumpy teacher across the hall came out and caught me drinking in the hallway. She immediately started yelling and threatening to write me up for it, since, you know, teenagers and drinks in the hallways usually end in disaster. James and I just laughed and brushed her off. But as I turned back around, I tripped over my own feet. I could practically feel her eyes burning holes in the back of my head, and I knew I was done for. Instinctively, I threw my hands out to catch myself, and my poor Coke went flying. Somehow, I didn't fall flat on my face. I took 3 huge, awkward steps trying to regain my balance, and in the back of my mind all I could think was, save the Coke, forget your face. In a blur, I smacked the can midair 3 times, each hit spinning it end over end, and finally caught it perfectly, without spilling a single drop. For a second, everyone just stood there, jaws on the floor, including me. Then I turned to the snarky teacher, gave her a little nod, took a triumphant sip of my Coke, and kept walking. James completely lost it laughing, and even now, years later, we still bring up the Coke save and crack up every single time. Story 6. When I was about 15, I was outside swinging. Yeah, I don't care what anyone says, I love to swing. There was a storm rolling in, so the playground was completely empty. I was just swinging away, minding my own business, when I looked up at the sky, and I swear on everything, I saw a flying saucer. A literal UFO. I stopped the swing so fast I nearly fell, then ran out into the open field for a better look. My eyes weren't playing tricks on me. There it was, clear as day. It looked exactly like the ones in those old 1950s sci-fi movies. Metallic, circular, with a little dome underneath. The only difference was that it wasn't flying in a straight line. It kind of swayed side to side, like it was surfing through the air. I stood there watching it for about a minute before it disappeared into the clouds. I sprinted home. I only lived a block away, burst through the door, and started yelling for my dad about what I'd just seen. And I swear, fate was laughing at me. Because guess what was playing on TV at that exact moment? That 70s show. And it was that episode where Kelso swears he saw a UFO and convinces everyone to watch the sky with him, only to find out it was just plain lights or something. My dad looked at me, then looked at the TV, and completely lost it, laughing right in my face. I didn't even know how to react. I mean, I could see how ridiculous it looked, so I ended up laughing too. I spent the next hour trying to convince him I really did see a UFO. And honestly, I still believe it. I'm not saying it was aliens or anything. I just know what I saw. It wasn't a plane, it wasn't a weather balloon. I'm dead serious. To this day, I still tell people this story, and nobody ever believes me. Story 7. I was brought on stage at a Green Day concert to play drums. I tried to look cool and did a heel click and instantly dislocated my knee. I had to walk up a riser to the drum set, and with every step, my knee buckled. When I finally got up there, Trey Cool and his drum tech noticed how badly I was limping and didn't want me to play. Billy Joe Armstrong came back to see what was taking so long, and when they told him I'd busted my knee, he grabbed the mic in front of a sold-out crowd of 32,000 people at the Bank Atlantic Center and said, "Broke his knee? Shake it off, man. It's time to play the drums." So I did. I played Knowledge by Operation Ivy with Billy Joe Armstrong and Mike Dirnt. At the end, I went for a drum fill and Trey yelled, "You asshole," then immediately remembered I was injured and helped me down from the riser. Backstage, paramedics checked out my leg. Billy Joe's wife was there and told people to give me one of everything from the merch booth, but the lawyers quickly stepped in and shut that down. All I ended up getting were the drumsticks I'd played with, which I eventually lost. While I was sitting there with a handler, she asked if I needed anything. I looked down the hallway and saw Jim Adkins from Jimmy Eat World. They had opened the show. I was a huge fan, so I asked if I could meet him. She went over to talk to him, came back, and said, "He said he'll come by when he's done talking, but don't hold your breath." A few minutes later, while I was chatting with the paramedic, Jim suddenly appeared out of nowhere, put his hands over my knee, and yelled, "Get out of him, Satan. Get out." Then he laughed and asked what happened. I told him the whole story, and he said, "Seriously? You got on stage with Green Day and broke your knee? That sucks." Then he pulled up a chair and hung out with me for about 30 minutes until the end of the show, when the staff finally kicked me out. It was 2005, I was 20 years old, and honestly, it was the best concert of my life. Story 8. When my older brother and I were kids, about 12 and 7, we went out to play in an open field and found some thin PVC pipes to use as swords. They were about an inch thick and around 4 to 6 feet long. Our play fight got pretty wild, full of fake martial arts moves and imaginary fireballs, until we decided to go for the final attack, like in an anime showdown. We faced each other dramatically for a few seconds. Then my brother wound up his arm like a baseball pitcher, lifted his leg, and hurled his sword straight at my head. I remember the sound of it cutting through the air, a sharp whistle, as I squeezed my eyes shut and instinctively raised my own sword to block it like some kind of samurai. Then crack. My hand stung like I'd just slapped a brick wall. I opened my eyes and saw his plastic spear split perfectly in half, the two pieces lying on either side of me on the ground. Somehow, I had blocked it midair and snapped it clean in two. My hands were ringing, but neither of us was hurt. We both completely lost it, screaming about how awesome it was. My brother looked at me, wide-eyed, and said I must have had a guardian angel watching over me. A week later, we were at it again, this time sword fighting with plastic baseball bats. I swung too high, smashed the ceiling light, and ended up cutting my arm on the falling glass. I guess my guardian angel saw that one coming and decided to go protect some smarter kids instead. Story 9. When I was a board art student during my freshman year, I decided it was the perfect time to test a weird ambition of mine, to see if I was hot enough to be a dancer. So, I auditioned, which basically meant spinning around a pole and proving I could actually take my clothes off, and started working a few random nights and mostly weekends. The place happened to be Orlando's, the same club that appeared in The Wire. It had been renovated by then, but the layout was still similar. I even met and spent some time with Michael Phelps there once. One night, an extremely attractive young British guy kept buying dances from me. He was there with some co-workers for a pharmaceutical convention. After a few rounds of drinks and plenty of flirting, he asked for a private room upstairs in the VIP lounge. 15 minutes there cost $375. At the time, I was a student with no real bills, so that much money for a short session sounded amazing. Those rooms had a cozy vibe, a couch, a small stage with a pole, and bottle service. Security was always right by the door, so you could leave at any time if you felt uncomfortable. Once we got inside, he surprised me by immediately going down on me. At first, I froze. It wasn't what I expected at all, but after a moment, I just went with it. He was British, charming, and honestly gorgeous. I know it wasn't the smartest thing to do, but it ended up being, well, incredible. He was skilled, to say the least, and the wild part? I actually got paid for it. Looking back, I realize how risky it was, but luckily, nothing bad came of it. That whole experience, being 19, drinking for free, talking to rich and interesting people, getting attention and confidence I'd never had before, made me realize I could do anything I set my mind to, even if it meant stepping far outside my comfort zone. My mom eventually found out, though. When she heard about Michael Phelps being there, she broke down crying, not because of what I did, but because she thought it was disrespectful that I danced in front of an American hero. Story 10. When I was 12, my brother was about 17 or 18, and he had the family truck, a 1968 maroon Chevy 2500, the kind of vehicle that practically oozed toughness. He worked retail while in high school and usually drove it to work. One night, while he was on a late shift, the truck was stolen right out of the store's parking lot. It was gone for about a week, and we were all heartbroken. That truck had been in our family for decades. Then one day, while we were all out working on the farm, a man came walking up our driveway asking if he could use our phone because he'd run out of gas. We're friendly country folks, so of course we said sure and followed him to his vehicle. And that's when things got interesting. Parked at the end of the drive was a deep maroon Chevy truck, the exact same color as ours. You could feel the tension rise instantly. We got closer and everything matched. The same model, the same dents, even the same license plate. We might be country folk, but we're not dumb. My mom decided to play it cool at first. She smiled and said, "Hey, that's a really nice truck you've got there. What year is it?" The guy shrugged and said, "Oh, I think it's a 69. Belonged to my grandpa." My mom leaned a little closer, peeking through the window. The ignition was completely torn up, and there was a gas can in the cab with a hose running straight to the engine. She turned back to him and said calmly, "Oh no, buddy, I think that's a 68. Want to know why I think that?" The guy nodded nervously and said, "Yeah, why?" She locked eyes with him and shouted, "Because it's my goddamn truck." The guy froze, stammered a few words, and then bolted. His female partner in crime didn't wait long to follow. They both took off running down the road. My brother, hearing the commotion, jumped on his motorcycle and tore off after them, but they got away. We pushed the truck into the garage and waited for my dad to calm down before doing anything else. Inside the cab, we found piles of trash. They'd been using the truck to haul garbage and random junk. There were 4 or 5 bags full of mail, receipts, and documents, which we went through piece by piece. They had completely messed up the carburetor and rigged a gas can because they couldn't figure out how to switch between the truck's 3 fuel tanks. We called the police, identified the thieves in a lineup, but nothing ever came of it. The cops just shrugged and said, "Local trouble." To this day, we like to think that old Chevy just wanted to come home. Story 11. When I was about 14 or 15, I used to take my dad's car without him knowing, just for joyrides or to pick up weed with a buddy. One night around 9 p.m., my friend and I had just picked up some and were sitting in a parking lot, rolling a blunt. Suddenly, a cop pulled in and turned his spotlight on us. I'd already been arrested once before and was terrified of going back to jail. As the police car got closer, I panicked and started backing out of the parking spot, hoping to leave before he reached us. But the moment I got near the exit, his sirens lit up. He clearly wanted me to pull over. My friend was freaking out, yelling about what to do with the weed, and before I could think, I slammed my foot on the gas and took off. Yep, I ended up in a car chase with the police. I sped down the road and, in full panic mode, turned down the first street I saw, which turned out to be a dead-end cul-de-sac. I was trapped. So, with no plan whatsoever, I ditched the car and my friend and sprinted behind the houses into the woods. I've never run that fast in my life. The adrenaline was insane. I swear I could have outrun a cheetah. I somehow lost the cop and found myself alone in a wooded area between neighborhoods. I sat down, trying to catch my breath, but then I started hearing more sirens in the distance, and then a helicopter. In my panicked teenage brain, I was convinced they were using infrared cameras to find me, so I curled up into a tight ball and tried not to move, thinking it would hide my body heat. I don't know if it actually worked, but after a couple of hours, things got quiet again. I was about 5 or 6 miles from home, mostly through residential areas, and I didn't want to risk getting spotted. I moved carefully, jogging through open areas and diving behind bushes whenever I saw headlights. After what felt like forever, I finally made it home, exhausted, filthy, and scared out of my mind. I knew I had to tell my dad. I woke him up, confessed everything, and he was furious. He'd seen me get into trouble before, but this was way beyond anything I'd ever done. To make things worse, his car was now sitting abandoned in a cul-de-sac with weed all over the inside. He had a business trip the next day, so all he could do was report the car stolen and tell the police he didn't know where I was when it happened. The next day, he filed the report and left for the airport. My older brother, who lived with us, knew what happened and said he'd play dumb if the cops came by. Sure enough, a few hours later, a police officer showed up to question us. He asked where I'd been, who I was with, and what I knew about the car. Turns out my friend, let's call him Jeff, had stayed with the car after I ran off and told the cops my first name, but not my last. I gave the officer some made-up story about being at another friend's house, but when he said he'd need to verify my story with those people, I knew I was screwed. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "I think it's time you tell me the truth." My brother gave me a look that said, "Just do it." So I told him everything. The panic, the chase, running into the woods, all of it. He listened quietly, then told me to wait while he stepped outside to make a call. I thought that was it, that I was about to get cuffed and taken in. When he came back, he sat down across from me and said, "What you did was serious. You risked your life, your friend's life, and mine. You could be facing some serious charges right now. But there's one problem. I never saw your face." I was stunned. He said, "Since I can't positively ID you as the driver, I'm not going to arrest or charge you." I felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. He told me Jeff was getting hit with a misdemeanor for possession, but otherwise, I was free to go. Before leaving, he gave me the whole straighten up your life talk, how I was lucky this time and might not be next time. I apologized and thanked him. And yeah, I know what people usually say. "That's impossible. Cops don't need to see your face to arrest you." You're probably right. But that's exactly how it happened. Maybe he didn't want to ruin a kid's life. Maybe he didn't want to deal with the paperwork. Or maybe he just didn't want his fellow officers to know he got outrun by a 15-year-old. I'll never know. But I do know this. That night, I got the luckiest break of my life. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.